lot of So yesterday, what was the last topic we discussed? We discussed about the radius of force radius. Right? We discussed about the radius of a particular orbit. Yeah. So today we'll be discussing about the energy of an electron in a particular orbit. So we know that electrons are going to be in different orbits. So in whichever orbit the electron is confined to, we'll be finding the expression for the energy of the electron in that particular orbit. Okay. So let us consider a scenario like this. Where there is an atom and a nucleus which has a charge of how much value? Ze, around which there is an electron that is revolving with the velocity of Vn. What does n stand for? The nth orbit, and the radius of the nth orbit is Rn. Right? So if this is going to be the scenario, what is our job? To find the energy of the electron in that particular orbit. Right? For that, what we will do is, so tell me, when an electron has a motion, it has velocity and mass, what is the first energy that comes to your mind? So when I say the total energy possessed by the electron, can I say it is equal to sum of what? Kinetic energy, because it has a velocity, plus what potential energy? It is the electrostatic potential energy. Why did you say electrostatic potential energy is existing? Because there are two charges. What are the two charges? One charge is due to the nucleus and the second charge is due to the, yes. Are you able to understand that? So what is going to be the kinetic energy of the particle? Half into m into Vn square, right? Plus what is going to be the potential energy? K Z into E the whole divided by R. Okay, R. Okay, there is a mistake in the second term that I will please correct it. What is mistake? It's a very, very small mistake. Mathematically it is right, but logically there is some mistake. I missed something. That is not. I told you already. See, whenever you are dealing with scalar quantities, you should take the sign of the charge into consideration. I didn't consider the sign of the charge. Had I written the force, the expression for force, then I will not take the sign of the charge into consideration. But I'm writing the energy, sorry, expression for potential energy. So I need to take the sign of each charge into consideration. So I should write it as minus E. Okay, if not, the whole expression will go wrong and you will never find the answer. Is that clear? So this is the first step, right? But now we know the fact for the electron to revolve in a circular orbit, for the electron to revolve in a circular orbit, what is necessary? Centripetal force is required. So what is going to be the centripetal force? That is m Vn square divided by Rn. This is provided by whom? One stuck, just a minute. MBN square 100. So MBN square divided by Rn is provided by which force? It is provided electrostatic force. So KZT into E divided by Rn square. Here, is it right or wrong? It is right because I'm writing the expression for a vector quantity. When you're writing for vector quantity, you need not take the sign into consideration. Okay. So Rn and Rn will get cancelled. So m into Vn square, can I write it as kz e square divided by Rn? Right? So kz e square divided by Rn is going to be the second expression. Now, observe. I will use 2 in 1. I'm using the second expression in 1, which implies half into m into Vn square is how much? By Rn. Here what you have? Minus kz e square divided by Rn. Right? So half kz e square by Rn minus kz. So you will get minus half of kz e square divided by Rn. So an important conclusion that we can draw from here is, what is actually kz e square divided by Rn with a negative sign? What is minus kz e square divided by Rn? It is the electrostatic potential energy. But what is the final expression that we got? This is the total energy of the electron. So the total energy of the electron in the nth orbit, can I conclude something like this? Observe. Total energy of electron in nth orbit is exactly equal to half of the electrostatic potential energy. You have to understand, sometimes the questions what they will do is, they'll give you the value of electrostatic potential energy. Let's say they are saying it is minus 3.6 electron volt. And they'll ask you, what is the total energy of this? Total energy of the electron in that particular orbit. You need not sit and do for the whole derivation. What is it you're supposed to do? Just make it half. Okay. Then what about the kinetic energy? So kinetic energy is also equal to half of the electrostatic potential energy. Are you able to understand? So the total energy is half of the electrostatic potential energy. Kinetic energy is equal to half of the magnitude of electrostatic potential. That makes more sense. So for example, if they give you the electrostatic potential energy is minus 3.6 electron volt and they ask you what is the kinetic energy, what will you say? Kinetic energy can't be negative. It is 1.8 electron volt. You would only take the magnitude. So this logic will be helpful for you to solve the problems in a faster manner. Right? Please make a note of. Right? There is no doubt, no? These are very, very important points. Right. Now we'll discuss the next step. So, if you see the expression for total energy, it is minus kz e square divided by 2 times Rs. Right? So yesterday I told you, whenever you're doing something experimentally, you should be in a position to calculate it. So you should try to write it in terms of maximum values, which was constants. Right? K is a constant. Z you can find from the periodic table. E is a constant. 2 is a constant. But what is not constant? Rn. So Rn, for Rn we derived an expression yesterday. Tell me what is it? Minus kz e square divided by before we get to the 0.53, right? I want to write the whole expression of you wrote an expression before getting the 0.53. So me n square h square. 1 minute. This is what we got, right? N square h square me into 1 minute. I think there was a mistake in yesterday's derivation. ME was supposed to come in the denominator, right? I think there is some mistake. Okay, let us look at this again. So let us do this again. Okay, let us see where we went wrong. Because as far as I remember, it will come n square h square in the numerator. So what we'll first derive the radius of the nth orbit, then again we'll go back to the expression of energy. So what is the radius? How did we start the expression? We wrote. Sorry, what did we write? For radius of the nth orbit, what is the first step that we wrote? Force is what? Kz e square divided by Rn square is equal to mvn square divided by Rn. This is the first step. So 1 Rn and this will get cancelled. Is there anything else that is getting cancelled? No. So from this I can say Rn is equal to Kz e square divided by m into Vn square. Right? Let this be expression number 1. What is that we were supposed to eliminate from this? You plan to eliminate Vn. So for eliminating Vn, we applied the concept of conservation of angular momentum, which is called as Bohr's dash condition. Quantization condition, yes. So which implies Vn is equal to nh divided by 2 pi into m. I hope you're able to understand that here mass is the mass of whom? Mass of electron, not the proton. M into Rn, right? This is equation number 2. If I take 2 and substitute it in 1, I get Rn is equal to Kz e square divided by m into, what is the value of Vn square? N square h square divided by 4 pi square m. Right. So this m and this m will get cancelled. Okay. So Rn will be equal to, I'm writing an extra step, Kz e square into 4 pi square into m into Rn square divided by n square h square. This is right, no? So in the case of K, I will write it as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. Correct? So 4 and 4 are gone, pi and pi are gone. So 1 Rn will get cancelled. So Rn is equal to how much now? This is the right expression. N square h square epsilon naught divided by pi z e square m. Pi z e square m. This is the expression. Yesterday, I think we got m in the numerator. That is wrong. So this is the expression. By substituting all the values, I think I wrote all the values, right? H is equal to 6.626 into all those values. When you substitute, what will you get? Rn will come out as 0.53 n square divided by z and so this is what I asked you. So this Rn is what you're supposed to remember sometimes. N square h square epsilon naught divided by pi z e square into m. Everything is in terms of constancy except what? Except the number of the orbit and the atomic number, which is subjective to that particular element and orbit. Right, I hope I'm clear to this point, right? So I've done copy? Done? Okay. So all these things. Right. So now we have seen this concept. Yes. Now tell me. In the place of Rn, we should write n square h square epsilon naught divided by pi z e square into m. Right? This makes sense? Right. Let's see. Minus 1 divided by 4 pi epsilon naught into z e square divided by 2 into, this will go to the numerator, pi z e square m divided by n square h square epsilon. Did you understand what I wrote? So in the place of k, I wrote it as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught. This z e square by 2, I combined and wrote it as one term. This pi z e square m went to the numerator divided by n square h square epsilon naught as 1 term. Right. So when you multiply everything, what is it you are going to get? Pi z square e power 4 m divided by 4 into 2 8 pi epsilon naught square. Pi we can cancel with a negative sign. So minus z e power 4 into m divided by 8 epsilon naught square n square h square. So please copy this once. Let me verify if it is right. So minus z e power 4 into m divided by 8 epsilon naught square n square into h square. Right. They have written it. So let me verify whether it is right. What is it? Minus, this is the expression that we got. Minus z square, check your notes and tell. Minus z square m e power 4 divided by 8 epsilon naught square n square h square. Right? Perfect. So now what we can do is, let me write it like this. Minus m e power 4 divided by 8 epsilon naught square h square into z divided by n square. So I'm separating the constants and the variables which are related to the particular element separately. Right? I'm separating them. So what are all constants? A mass, the charge of the electron, epsilon naught, and h, everything is a constant. By substituting all these values, you will get the energy, the total energy EP is equal to minus 13.6 into Z divided by n square electron volt. Not Z square, right? Yeah, Z square. Right. So this is Z square by n. So this will be minus 13.6 into Z square divided by n electron volt. You would have seen this expression. So energy of the electron for hydrogen atom, the first orbit, is minus 13.6 electron volt. Have you seen this number somewhere? Are you familiar with this number, minus 13.6? In structure of atom, you would have seen this. O n square. Yeah. Fine. I think it is for radius, it is h square by n. For n square by z. Right. So minus 13.6 into z square divided by n square electron volt. Are you able to understand? So this is how it is derived. So this is the science involved behind it. Right. These are the two important derivations. After this, we had been discussing about one concept repeatedly. So why did Thomson's model fail? Because it could not explain about the spectral line formation, and it told, according to that concept, that there have been only one spectral line whose wavelength is 1300 angstrom. Remember yesterday? Right. Similarly, Bohr's model also couldn't explain about the spectral lines that were formed, because he told that the, sorry, not Bohr's, Rutherford's model also couldn't explain the spectral line concept, because what did they say? He told that the electrons revolve around the nucleus in some random orbits. If that had happened, theoretically, what should have happened? It should have released continuous spectrum. Do you remember that word? It should have released continuous spectrum, and it should have lost energy and collapsed back into the nucleus. So it couldn't explain the stability of atom at all. But Bohr's model says for hydrogen-like atoms, right? It mainly explains only for hydrogen-like atoms. How many spectral lines were discovered? 5 spectral lines were discovered, depending on the transition, right? Whichever orbit the transition is taking place, the particular spectral line is classified to that particular combination. Okay, let's see what it is. So that's what we call it as spectral series of hydrogen atoms. So we know this concept already, which is called as emission spectrum. So what happens when an electron in a hydrogen atom or hydrogen-like atom? So what do I mean by hydrogen-like atom? Hydrogen consists of how many electrons? one electron. Hydrogen-like atoms should also consist of one electron. Can you give me an example? Sodium. So hydrogen-like atom means it should be like having only one electron, not like one electron in the valence shell. No. Lithium 2+ is an example. Because lithium has 3 electrons, 2+ means it has lost 2 electrons, now it has only 1 electron. So lithium 2+ will be similar to a hydrogen atom. That is what we call it as hydrogen-like atom. Okay, remember this. So whenever an electron in hydrogen atom jumps from higher energy level to lower energy level, the difference in the two levels is released as what? So whenever an electron jumps from a higher orbit to a lower orbit, there is some energy released in the form of electromagnetic radiation. And electromagnetic radiation has a particular wavelength associated with it. That is what they're trying to say. Right? So two levels, it is emitted as radiation of particular wavelength, and that is what is called as a spectral line. So secondly, if you ask about the wavelength, is it going to have a fixed value or is it subjective to the difference, the transition between which two orbits it is taking place? The answer is it depends on the energy levels of those particular orbits. Okay, let me explain what it means. So just now we saw one concept. What is the derivation that we saw? Energy of an electron in nth orbit. Let's say there are multiple orbits, right? So what is the formula for energy of the electron in nth orbit? Minus 13.6 z square divided by n square in terms of electron volt. Correct? So for hydrogen atom, z is equal to 1, but n need not be necessarily 1. Z is equal to 1 for sure. Atomic number is 1. So En is equal to, for hydrogen atom, think about it, okay? En is equal to minus 13.6 divided by n square. So when I put n is equal to 1, energy in the first orbit, energy of the electron in the first orbit is minus 13.6 electron. What is the energy of the electron in the second orbit? Minus 13.6 divided by 4. How much is it going? How much are you going to get? Minus 3.4 is what you're going to get. Exactly, you will get 3.4. So minus 3.4 electron volt. What about the energy of the electron in the third orbit? Minus 13.6 divided by 9. How much are you going to get? Minus 1. You will actually get 1.54 something. You will get 1.54 electron volt. What about the energy of the electron in the fourth orbit? Minus 13.6 divided by 16. Minus 0.85 you will get. Something like that. It keeps on going. Okay. So when this is going to happen, you are able to understand that the energy of the electron in this orbit is minus 13.6. Here it is minus 3.4. Here it is minus 1.54, minus 0.85 something, right? So as you move from the lower orbit, just as you move away from the nucleus, what is happening to the energy? Increase or increase? It is increasing because that's what the concept says. So when the electron is at a greater distance with respect to the nucleus, it will have more amount of energy. Don't look at the number, look at the minus sign. So negative of a smaller value is a bigger number, right? So energy is going to increase. So let's say the electron is in the fourth orbit. It is excited to the fourth orbit and it is jumping to the second orbit, right? So there is a difference in the energy between these two levels. The difference in the energy between these two levels is what is released as h nu. That is E2 minus E1 is equal to h nu. What is this called as? This is called as Bohr's frequency condition. This nu is there, right? This nu can be written as h into c divided by lambda. You know this? The nu is frequency is equal to c divided by wavelength. So this is the wavelength they are trying to talk about. So if you have to practically calculate the wavelength, what are you supposed to do? You need to know the energy of the electron in a particular orbit So you need to know the energy of electron in two orbits between which the transition is taking place and equate it to hc by lambda. That will give you the value of the lambda, the wavelength they are trying to speak about. You're able to understand this concept, guys? Right? This is what we are going to discuss. If you want, please make a note. Done? So now let's read out the points. As the wavelength of the spectral line depends upon the two orbits. Now you are able to understand between which the transition of electron takes place, based on which various spectral lines are obtained. Are you able to understand this point? Right. So the different wavelengths, why are there different wavelengths? Because the transition can take place between fourth and the first orbit, fourth and the second orbit, fourth and the third orbit, anything of that. So when these kind of things are happening, what will happen? There are discrete wavelengths that we get released. So the different wavelengths constitute spectral series, which are the characteristics of the atoms emitting them. So the following are the spectral series of the hydrogen atom. What are they? One is Lyman series, second is Balmer series, Paschen, Brackett, and Fun. Okay. So what is Lyman series? When an electron jumps from any of the nth orbit to which orbit? To the ground state. That is the first orbit. Then the spectral lines are emitted in which region? Ultraviolet region of the emission spectrum. Ultraviolet region of the spectrum, and they are said to form a series called as Lyman series. Right. Here, N1 will be equal to 1, N2 can be anything, 2, 3, 4, anything. Right. And they have mentioned something called as the wave number of the Lyman series is given by nu bar is equal to R into 1 minus 1 by N2 square. But before that, we need to understand what they are trying to speak. What is R? Any idea? What is this R that they have written? Some constant. What constant? Any idea? It's called Rydberg constant. Rydberg. R by D, D E R G. Rydberg constant. Okay. I'll explain how it has come. Okay. Now listen. Listen. So you can write down the heading as wavelength of the spectral line. So write down the heading as wavelength of spectral line. So you have different energy levels. Right. I call this as N2. I'll call this as N1. So when the electron jumps from higher to lower orbit, there is some amount of energy released, which I call it as H. So can I say energy of the electron in the nth orbit, sorry, N2 orbit minus the energy of the electron in the first orbit is what is resulting as the electromagnetic radiation hν, which I'll call it as hc by lambda. Right, force frequency condition. Right. What is En2? Just now we derived it minus 13.6 minus 13.6 Z square divided by N square, or can I write it as N2 square? Minus is already there here. Minus 13.6 into Z square divided by N1 square. Can I write it like this? So if I take that minus 13.6 Z square outside, what am I going to get? Minus 1 by N2 square plus 1 by N1 square. Right. So minus 13.6 into Z square into 1 by n1 square. Okay, I'll push the minus sign inside. What is going to happen? 1 by n2 square minus 1 by n1 square. Right. This is equal to hc divided by lambda. Right. So what is 1 by lambda equal to? 13.6 divided by h into c into 1 by n2 square minus 1 by n1 square into z. Is there any doubt in this step? Right. So 1 by lambda, I'm saying this is the value. So 13.6 is in terms of what? It is in terms of electron volt. One minute. So 13.6 is in terms of electron volt. What is the value of H that you know? 6.6 into 10 power minus 34 joule second, and speed of light is 3 into 10 power 8 meter per second. How you convert electron volt to joule? 1 joule is how many electron volt? One joule is how many electron volt? I think I already told this to you, right? So remember this, okay? They will come in the next chapter also. So you have one electron and you want to move this one electron across the potential difference of 1 volt. Then how much will be the work that you do? Work done is equal to work done is the potential energy. So potential energy is equal to E into V. So what is the value of E? 1.602 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb into 1 volt is equal to how much? 1.602 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb volt. Are you able to understand? Coulomb volt. This coulomb volt put together is what we call it as joule. So 1.602 into 10 power minus 19. So 1 electron volt is how many joules? 1.6 into 10 power minus 19, which is literally the charge of an electron. Okay, next time, don't forget this. Please write it down. Right, this is the next time. So right. Now tell me how to convert electron volt to joule. So 1 by lambda will be equal to 13.6 into 1.602 into 10 power minus 19, the whole divided by 6.6 into 10 power minus 34 into 3 into 10 power 8, accepted? Multiplied with what? Into 1 by n2 square minus, sorry, 1 by n2 square minus 1 by n1 square. This whole value is what is called as Rydberg constant. Okay. So 1 by lambda will be equal to R into 1 by n2 square minus 1 by n1 square. And the value of this Rydberg constant is 1.09 into 10 power 7 meter inverse. So that's where is there. It has hydrogen atom, so I left it. Is it clear? right? So there are two things we are continuously calculating. One is wavelength, and there is something called 1 by lambda. What is reciprocal of wavelength called as? Wave number, right? So can I write wave number is equal to R into 1 by N2 square minus 1 by N1 square into Z square, right? This is the formula they used. Okay, remember this. So this is used in many problems. When we discuss problems, I'll explain it. Right, R into 1 by N2 square minus 1 by N1 square into. Am I clear? One minute. Minus 30, see the step minus 13.6 Z square N square. If I take outside, there is one mistake I did. It should have been plus, right? Guys, only one swapping we need to do. We need to change it between the minus and the plus. Because I was checking this value. See, new bar is there, right? This is we got 1 by N2 square minus 1 by N1 square. See, for example, N2 is a higher number. So if I put N2 is equal to 2, 1 by 4 minus 1, if I get something like this. 1 by 4 minus 1 is a negative value, and you're trying to say that wavelength is negative. That should not happen, right? So that is where I got the doubt. No, no, we made a mathematical mistake. What is it? It is minus 13.6 into Z square divided by N square is there, right? I took out minus 13.6 outside. Then this should have been left as positive only, because now if you multiply, you get minus 13.6 into Z square divided by N square, and this should have been a minus sign. So please change this value or no. Okay, or else let me find out a shortcut on how you can correct this. This I wrote it as minus, right? This we wrote as plus, correct? Now we'll make this as plus. Okay, we'll make this as plus. Next step minus. Write it along with me. So you have to understand from where I'm writing. I'll put it with red color. This is plus. This is minus. This is minus. Here there is a minus. Right. Here there is a minus. And now we will change and write it here as Whatever. So I hope you made all the changes, right? Let's recheck it again. This step, it is a plus. Here it is a minus. Here you need to add a minus. Here you need to add a minus, and here. And the final expression you write 1 by lambda is equal to r into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square into z square, or nu bar is equal to r into 1 by n1 square minus 1 by n2 square into z square. Right? Now you will be able to understand it better. So now it is very simple. See, the wave number of the Lyman series, u bar is equal to r into 1 by, what is the value of n1? So for Lyman series, the electron has to jump from higher orbit to the first orbit. Right? N1 is equal to 1. So r into 1 by 1 square minus 1 by n2 square. Right? So if you calculate the frequency, under what region of electromagnetic spectrum will you get the value? You will get it in the ultraviolet region. Okay. So sometimes in the question they can ask, they'll put a question like this. The electron is getting transition between, or if the electron is jumping between two orbits such that the spectral series belongs to ultraviolet region. What should be the orbit from which it should jump to get a particular frequency or to get a particular wave number? So what is the orbit from which it should jump to get a particular? They'll give you a wave number value. Okay. So let's say they are giving the wave number as u bar, and or let's say some value x. Okay. And what is that you need to find? You need to find the value of n2. But what is the hint given in the question? They told it ultraviolet region, so indirectly they told you n1 is equal to 1. So every time they'll not say Lyman series. Sometimes they'll say it belongs to some particular series. That point you should be in a position to answer. Got it? So similarly, if you talk about Balmer series, when an electron jumps from any of the outer orbits to the second orbit, we get a spectral series called Balmer series. All the lines of the series of the hydrogen have their wavelength in the which region? Visible region. There is only one which is in the visible region. So what will be the formula? U bar is equal to R into, you can remember it going forward. U bar is equal to R into 1 by N1 square. N1 is how much? 2 square is 4 minus 1 by N2 square is how much? Can be anything. N2 can be any number greater than 2. Right? So this an extra information, and sometimes the question is asked based on this also. The first line in the Barnard series is called as H alpha line. The second line is called as H beta. The third line is called as H gamma. Then H delta. It keeps on going like that. Okay, generally the question sometimes they say the H alpha line is produced. So H alpha line is produced in which series? Barnard series. right? And it is the first spectral line. So what do you mean by first spectral line? When the electron jumps from the, so one logic is clear, right? For Balmer series, what would be the lowermost orbit to which at which the electron could stop? Two. So for what is the least transition that can take place? The electron can jump from third to second, right? So if an electron jumps from third to second, we call it as the first spectral line, and technically the name of that spectral line is called as H alpha line in the Balmer series. Okay, it is very rarely used, but you might get questions. So second line means where should it jump from? It should jump from the fourth orbit to the second orbit. Third to second, fifth to second, H gamma line. It becomes something like that. Right? Shall I move on? What is the next one? Paschen series. Paschen is what is going to happen here? So electron jumps from higher orbit to, it should stop at 3. Right? And it belongs to which region? It belongs to the infrared region. So this will be the formula. So for this bracket series, it should similarly jump from higher orbit and it should stop at the fourth orbit. It is also in the infrared region. So there will be 3 spectral series which belong to the infrared region. The next one also. Okay. The last one, the fund series. It jumps from any higher orbit and it should stop at the fifth orbit. So N1 will be 5, N1 square is going to be 25. So this is going to be like the formula. So next time when you have a problem, right, looking at the problem, you can directly use this like a formula itself. But it's very simple, right? You can remember it. R into 1 by N1 square minus 1 by N2 square. Why is Z square missing here? Because it is taken for hydrogen atom. Suppose it is a hydrogen-like atom. For example, like how we told, if it is lithium 2 plus, then what are you supposed to do? You should not ignore that Z. So Z square will always be, Z is 3. Z square will be 9. So always you should multiply with that 9 in the problem. So have these points, don't worry when we solve. I'll try to solve many problems based on this. Okay. So here. Next. Shall I proceed? So the next one is called as the energy level diagram, which we have already discussed. So what is the energy of the electron in the first orbit? So here again they're speaking only about hydrogen atom, but we have seen 4 different atoms, right? So the energy of the electron in the nth orbit of hydrogen atom will be minus 13.6 into Z is 1. So Z square by N square. So minus 13.6 divided by N square electron volt. So energy of the electron in the first orbit is minus 13.6. Energy of the electron in the second orbit is minus 3.4. Energy of the electron in the third orbit will be minus 1.51. Fourth orbit is going to be 0.85 and the fifth orbit is going to be 0.54 with a negative sign. Similarly, if it keeps on going, energy of the electron in the nth or infinite orbit is going to be 0. Infinite orbit doesn't exist. Infinite orbit is what? It is out of the pull of the attraction by nucleus. Right? If that kind of a scenario is attained, then the electron is out of the atom. So we are not concerned about it, right? They're able to understand this diagram is what we call it as energy level diagram, because each level is going to speak about the energy of the electron in that particular orbit. Right. So what are they saying? Therefore, it is seen from the above value that the energy associated with each state becomes less negative and approaches closer and closer to the maximum value 0 corresponding to n is equal to infinity. So taking these energies on a linear scale, the horizontal lines are drawn which represent the energy levels of the hydrogen atom, and this diagram is what we call it as energy level diagram. It's very simple, you need not memorize it. But what happened, unfortunately, the previous theories were disproved due to what? Due to this concept of spectral lines only, the discrete spectral lines. But there was a shortcoming in Bohr's theory also, because he explained the concept of spectral line, but he couldn't explain it beyond hydrogen atom. What about other atoms? So that was one of the drawbacks. Okay, that is what we call it as the shortcomings of Bohr's theory. What were the drawbacks of this theory? So Bohr's theory was able to successfully explain a number of experimental observations and has correctly predicted the spectral lines of hydrogen atom. However, the theory fails the following aspects. What are the aspects? First, the theory could not account for the spectra is plural. Okay, spectra of atoms more complex than hydrogen. It couldn't account for it. That is one drawback. Second, the theory does not give any information regarding the distribution and arrangement of electrons in an atom. The cloud-like structure and orbitals concept that you would have learned in your chemistry. We didn't explain anything about it. They start with orbits, right? So it does not explain the experimentally observed variation in the intensity of spectral lines of the elements. Okay, these were the drawbacks. But drawbacks is not from the exam point of view, it is only for your knowledge. Okay. Shall I proceed? You need not copy all these points. Fourth point is, when the spectral line of hydrogen atom is examined by spectrometers having high resolving power. Resolving power means it will be able to show you something with more clarity. Like how you take your camera phone, you take a 13 megapixel and a 25 megapixel one, which is going to have more resolution. 25 megapixel one because of its high resolving power. So resolving power means it can bring the pixels close, right? That is in terms of camera. In a similar way, if you have a spectrometer which has high resolving power, which can show you something with more clarity, if you observe it, it is found that a single line is composed of two or more close components. So you spoke about the lines, right? When electron jumps from the third to the second, you spoke about one spectral line, right? But if it was observed under a spectrometer, what happened? Two or more close components were observed. Okay. So this is known as the fine structure of spectral lines. So Bohr's theory could not account for the fine structure of these spectral lines. He didn't give an explanation for this also. He didn't give an explanation for this also. And lastly, it was found that when electric and magnetic field is applied to an atom, each of the spectral lines splits into several other lines. So when the atom is subjected to electric field, the effect that is getting produced is called as the Stark effect. Similarly, when an atom is subjected to the magnetic field, the effect that is getting produced is what we call it as the Zeeman effect. So Bohr's theory could not explain these two effects also. Okay. Any doubts at this point? Full of theory only. Right. The last concept of this chapter, which is pronounced it as the de Broglie. Okay. So de Broglie's explanation to the quantization of angular momentum of electron. So what is angular concept? Sorry, Bohr's quantization condition. Angular momentum is equal to nh by mvr is equal to nh divided by 2 pi, right? So here the de Broglie's concept of how it supported the concept of angular momentum. So when the concept of de Broglie came into picture, later it was discovered. We should have actually discussed this in the previous chapter. Okay, because there is something called as light has dual properties. Any idea about it? It has wave and particle nature, right? So where is wave nature exhibited? Okay, we'll discuss it later. Any idea? Can you give me an example where light exhibits particle effect, as you know? This is a very famous effect also. Performed by Einstein. Photoelectric effect. In photoelectric effect, light exhibits particle nature. Okay, so we should have actually discussed all those things. So let's see what is going to happen here. So what is it? Any idea about what is the 11th chapter? Dual properties of matter. Right, dual properties of wave and matter is what we are going to see. That is, wave exhibits dual properties. When wave can behave like a particle, they said that nature follows symmetry, so particle can behave like a wave. Here we are discussing about the electron, right? So electron is a particle, and that particle will also exhibit wave nature, is what we would have discussed it there. So as of now, you have only one option, accept it. So if you see this concept, his name, he has started explaining that electron had wave nature. The scientist explained that electron had wave nature, and what he mentioned is, if you take any electron in the nth circular orbit or kth circular orbit of radius rk, then what will happen is the electron will travel in the form of a wave. Right? It is going to travel in the form of a wave, and from this point to this point, what can I call this distance as? Starting point of a wave to the ending point of a wave is what we call it as length of a wave, which is technically wavelength lambda. So you have one wavelength here. I use another color C. You have another wavelength here. You have other wavelength here, and you have another. So totally, how many total waves are you able to find here? There are 4 waves, right? So 4 waves means there will be 4 wavelengths. So 4 wavelengths, 4 lambda, which should be mathematically equal to what? 2 pi r. Right, that is what the theory says. So listen to this carefully. So for any electron moving in the nth orbit of radius rk, the total distance is equal to the circumference of the orbit, that is 2 pi into rn. So the 2 pi into rn should be equal to n lambda. Let this be equation number 1. Okay. Similarly, there is something called as de Broglie wavelength, where lambda is given as h divided by mv. From this only Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, all those things came into picture. So lambda is equal to h by mv, where mv is also called as the linear momentum, right? So if I take this and substitute it here, so 2 pi into Rn, if I write it as n times lambda, so that is nh divided by mv. What rearrangement can I do? mv into Rn, can I write it as nh divided by 2 pi? What is this? What is Bose quantization condition? So de Broglie's explanation for Bose quantization was something like this. It's clear, right? So that's it with this chapter. We are done with this. Any doubt? Any doubt? Clear? So atoms and nuclei, they literally are the same chapter only. As I told you, nuclear majority of the parts are deleted, so I'm not available from 27th. Okay? I'm not available the whole week. So you will have test on 6th, right? So nuclear, whatever is required, I'll teach you about. And I'll share this note, you guys read it. So I'll come on 3rd, right? 3rd, we will discuss problems. Okay, I'm starting the nuclear chapter. It is very, very simple. You people already know this. I'm just going to Deleted is from radioactivity. Atoms, nothing. Atoms, it is completely there. In nuclear chapter, from radioactivity, it is not there. Others, I think. It's very simple. It's not there. Radioactivity is not there. Okay. It's not there. See, fission and fusion alone, I have to check. What I will do, see, radioactivity is not a very big concept and already. Maximum take 45 minutes to teach. That's what they told about. Nowadays, they're asking questions. So math also, they told the same thing. They ask from properties of determinants. I know what. So it's better you learn. It is going to take only 40 minutes. I'll teach you. But not for this test maybe. I'll definitely teach you at some point. It is going to take only 40 to 45 minutes. Very, very simple concept. But for today, whatever is required for your the exam on 6th of Jan, that I'll teach. So that you can prepare. Seriya? So nuclei, what is it? Atoms and nuclei. So when in the atoms chapter, what happened? What were the levels of discovery that happened? First, they discovered electron. So it was done at the time of Thomson's model. So at that point, there was no concept of nucleus. Then who discovered nucleus? So Rutherford's experiment proved that there is something called as a positively charged center called as nucleus. But at that point, they didn't know that nucleus consisted of neutrons. They thought it is completely positively charged, means it had only protons. But if that was the scenario, for such a small space, you put all the positive charges inside, it would have been the most unstable thing in the world. You're able to understand, see, I have two positive charges separated by this distance. Let us assume the system is stable. Stable in the sense, nothing is happening to them. They are not disturbing, they are not jumping from their location. If I try to bring them closer, what am I trying to do? Am I not trying to increase the energy of the system? Because I'm decreasing the distance, so I'm increasing the energy, potential energy. As a result of which, what will happen? It will become most unstable. If I bring it even more closer, it becomes more unstable. Imagine like this, many positive charges, because you're saying protons is the atomic number. Then you think of bigger atomic numbers. So bigger atomic numbers is more number of protons. All those protons put inside a size of 10 power minus 14 meter means, which is smaller than a nanometer. Think how reactive they are supposed to be. If that is the case, the whole world will be unstable. Because we are also made up of atoms. Everything around us is made up of atoms, right? So if that is going to be the scenario, then it should have been most unstable, right? They didn't account for that at that point of time. They thought it is only positive charge and the electrons are revolving around so that the whole system is balanced, but that was not the scenario. Later came the discovery of neutrons, which was done by a scientist named James Chadwick. Okay, that's called discovery of neutrons. We will not be discussing all those things. In this chapter, whatever is required for the exam is this thing. What are all the different? So we'll first see the introduction. We'll see what is nucleus. Then we'll say the classification of nucleus isotopes, isobars, and isobars. Then we'll see the general property of nucleus. I'll just give you the outline. Okay. So what is nuclei? Nuclei is obviously the plural of nucleus. Right. So the atomic nucleus was discovered by Ernst Rutherford in 1911. So Rutherford's experiment on scattering of alpha particles proved that the mass of the atom and the positive charge is concentrated in very small central core of how much size? Approximately 10 power minus 14 meter, and that core was called as the nucleus. Just listen to it. Okay. So what is happening? The dimension of the nucleus is much smaller than the overall dimension of the atom, obviously, because the nucleus is inside the atom, right? So nucleus is surrounded by orbiting electrons. So in the previous chapter, we discussed about what happens when an electron jumps from one orbit to another. Here we are concerned only with what is happening inside a nucleus. Nothing else will be bothered about. Okay. So what does a nucleus consist of? A nucleus basically consists of two particles inside it. One is a positively charged particle called as proton, and the neutral particles called as neutrons. Protons and neutrons are collectively called as nucleons, right? It consists of protons and neutrons, which are collectively called as nucleons. So that number of nucleons is what is the mass number, right? Similarly, a proton has a positive charge of the same magnitude as that of an electron, and its rest mass is about 1836 times the mass of an electron. Okay. So neutron is what? Electrically neutral, whose mass is almost equal to the mass of the proton. So this is what you need to make a note of. So with respect to, so proton is the central particle. With respect to proton and electron, what is same? There are two parameters we are measuring. One is charge, one is mass. With respect to proton and electron, which is same? Charge is same, but mass is different. Who is heavier? Proton is heavier by a factor of approximately 1836 times. So it is 1836x greater than the mass of the electron. Now, if you take proton and neutron, what is same between them? It is the mass. So mass of the neutron is almost equal to the mass of the proton. That is what they are saying. Whose mass is almost equal to the mass of the proton. So, how are the nucleons held inside the nucleus? What force is binding them to stay inside? It is the nuclear force, right? Together by a strong attractive force called as the nuclear force. So, generally, how will you represent a nucleus? So, nucleus of an element is represented as X, A, Z, where A stands for what? Atomic mass. Atomic mass is basically what? It is the number of nucleons. Z stands for the number of protons. So electrons do not participate in this system at all. So XAZ is where X is the chemical symbol of the element, Z represents the atomic number, which is equal to the number of protons, and A represents the mass number, which is equal to the total number of protons and neutrons. So if suppose this kind of an element is given to you, they're asking you to calculate the number of neutrons, what will you do? Subtract the, yes. So do A minus Z, do the operation of A minus Z, that will give you the number of neutrons. For example, if you take the chlorine nucleus, chlorine has an atomic mass of 35, so 35 nucleons and 17 protons. So what will be the number of neutrons? 18. 35 minus 17 is going to give you 18. Simple. This is a very basic introduction of what is a nucleus. So what are the classifications of nuclei? So nuclei are basically classified as isotopes, isobars, and isotones. So what are isotopes? Iso means same. So what are isotopes? Elements which have same atomic number, means having the same number of protons but different nucleons, right? But having different mass number is what we call it as isotopes. Say H11, H21, and H31 are isotopes of hydrogen, right? So in other words, as I told you, isotopes are where element contain the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. So here one important point is, as the atoms of isotopes have identical electronic structure, they have identical chemical properties and are placed in the same location in the periodic table. So what about the next one? What are isobars? Same atomic mass but different atomic numbers. They have the same number of nucleons but have different number of protons. Are atoms of different elements. So they are the atoms of, so isotopes are the atoms of the same element. Isobars are the atoms of different elements which have the same mass number but different atomic number. For example, oxygen 16 and you have nitrogen also having 16. So if you look at the power, that is the mass number, they are the same, but the number of protons are different. So for oxygen it is 8, for nitrogen it is 7. Since isobars are atoms of different elements, what will happen? They have different physical and chemical properties. So obviously they are going to have different physical and chemical properties. What are isotones? So isotones are atoms of different elements having the same number of neutrons. So nowhere electrons got involved, which has the same number of neutrons. For example, C14 and oxygen 16. Right. So 14 minus 6 is going to give you 8. 16 minus 8 is also going to give you 8. So these two are isotones. Right. So general properties of nucleus, you have 6 properties. So out of the 6 properties, the first one is nuclear size. Okay. So according to the Rutherford's experiment, what happened? He told that the central part was a small sphere. Right? It was a small spherical structure, and for this nucleus, what is there was an empirical relation that was given. So it was theoretically framed that the radius of the nucleus was observed to be directly proportional to the cube root of mass number. So R is directly proportional to a power 1 by 3. And when you remove the proportionality symbol, R will be equal to R naught into a power 1 by 3. Where R naught is the constant of proportionality and its value is equal to 1.3 Fermi. Fermi is 10 power minus 15 meters. It is also called as femtometer. I think I told this yesterday. I know I'm little fast, but no option. Just listen. I'll share this notes. You can study it. Okay. So I hope you're clear with this concept, right? When you speak about nuclear size, R is equal to R naught into a power 1 by 3. So what about density? Density of whom? Density of the nucleus. So what is the formula for density? Nucleus is assumed to be a sphere. So what is the formula for density? Mass by volume. Mass of whom? Mass of the nucleus. So who contributes to the mass of the nucleus? Protons and neutrons. Both are there inside, right? And they have the same mass. So can I write A times, and they have the same mass. That is there. So I wrote A, that is the number of nucleon times mass of each nucleon. I can write it as mass of proton itself. See, there are two ways to write it, guys. Listen. Mass of proton is empty. Mass of neutron is Mn. Right? So how many protons are there? If I give you an element X, A, Z, how many protons are there? Right. A minus. Right? And mass of neutron is the same as mass of proton. So can I write Z times Mp plus A minus Z times Mp? So the Z times Mp and the Z will get cancelled. So it is not equal to A times Mp. Right? So this is the nuclear mass divided by what is the nuclear volume? 4 by 3 pi R cube. What is the value of R? Just now we saw. R naught into A power 1 by 3, the whole cube. So A times Mp divided by 4 by 3 pi R naught cube into A. So what will get cancelled? A and A are gone. 3 times mass of proton divided by 4 pi times R naught cube. So what is the meaning of this? 3 is a constant, mass of proton is a constant, 4 pi is a constant, and what about R naught? Yeah, that is also constant. The 1.3 Fermi, I told you, right? R naught is 1.3 Fermi, that is also constant. So from this, what is the important conclusion you can draw? The nuclear density of any atom you take in this world is going to be the same. Right? So nuclear density is always a constant. So that's what they're saying. See, substituting all these values, you will get the nuclear density as 1.8 into 10 power 17 kilogram per meter cube. Look at the density value. 10 power 17 means you have to put 17 zeros. In this small atom, that is the amount of density that is present. So think how much packed it would be. Right? It is so packed, which is almost constant for all the nuclei, irrespective of its size. So the high value of nuclear density shows that the nuclear matter is an extremely compressed state. Okay. So tell me one thing, will you be able to read from this notes if I share it? Will that help for the time being? I don't think I can do it. I don't want to rush also. Not. I don't like taking a class like this. Time is also not there. If I share this notes, will you guys be able to study for time being? Only the topics which I told you. Okay. So just go through them. So I'll just give you an outline. Nuclear charge is about the charge of the nucleus. Atomic mass unit, you would have heard about it. AMU. The charge of 1/12 of a carbon atom. Right. This is the most important concept I need to explain. But let's see whatever we can do from third at that point at least. Okay. Till then, you go through these notes. I'll continue on third.